Welcome to the Pull Up a Chair show. I'm Dr. Krysti Wick.
And I'm Dr. Jake Grenacher.
And we are here to let you in on our in-depth conversations on chiropractic practice, personal development, leadership, and business excellence.
If you are needing inspiration, motivation, clarity, or permission in any of these areas of your life, we're glad you're here. Pull up a chair.
Well, hey, everybody. We are so happy to be here with you as we jump into our very first topic. And this topic is going to be super applicable to wherever you are in practice, as long as you've been in practice for at least a few months, all the way to, decades long. This is the secret sauce. If I had to pick one secret sauce to my practice over the last 17 years, it is retention. It's really just remembering that once you have an existing relationship with someone, it's so much easier to foster that relationship or to, get them reactivated if they've fallen off the wagon than going out and finding oodles and oodles of new patients all the time. The ease with which this needs to happen in your practice really creates the best foundation and, the best situation for you and your team as you move forward so that you aren't beating your heads against the wall, trying every brand new marketing technique.
Yeah. And we'll get into, actually, this is, Krysti and I were talking a little bit too, is that this is probably like a 3 or 4 part thing. There'll be more parts on reactivation, how to educate, how to keep people longer, how to make sure you get that, patient visit average up higher and higher in triple digits, that kind of thing. We're going to, when we jump into tacticals, each time that, we're pulling up a chair, we want to make sure some tactical take homes of what can I do to actually do this. Today, we're going to be talking a lot about how to reactivate people that have fallen off. That's going to be our tactical take home. But we also want to make sure down the road, we're talking about, those people that are in the midst of care plans and they're maybe wellness patients already. How can you dig into ways to keep them longer? Because that's also part of retention, is that big part of just keeping the people that you have. But what Krysti said and what we've been talking about is, I couldn't agree more, is you are sitting on an absolute gold mine. Like Krysti said, you've been in practice a few months, there's some people, but if you're listening to this and you've been in practice for years, even 5 years or longer, the amount of inactive people you have you have the phone numbers for, the emails for probably, are just massive. So don't ignore the fact of all that you have already with you.
And we want to start with just a little bit of groundwork before we jump into that reactivation takeaway, because we find that this is a common just misconception in chiropractic as far as like, what does good retention look like? And so we always want to give you our perspective after, coaching hundreds and hundreds of docs over the years, because this will give you at least a good idea of where you're starting. And so throughout all of these episodes, please know this is all just factual. Like, we have all for sure been where you are, regardless of where you land in this. And we are here to cheer you on regardless of your starting point. It's just sometimes important to know how much room you have to grow so that you know how hard to push towards that growth, right? So unfortunately, the best stat that we have, most of us know about retention is PVA. And PVA isn't a perfect stat, but I'm just going to use it. So patient visit average, the number of visits that a client or a patient is staying in your practice. If you have a PVA under 12, you have a pain-based practice. If you get from that like 12 to 25 range, you're starting to talk about chiropractic as, lifestyle choice and as something you can utilize for your wellness toolbox. But then if you are getting higher and higher, then you're really starting to lock into helping a patient understand that chiropractic is about their function and not just how they're feeling. So in our world, we really love to see offices, if they truly want to call themselves a wellness office where they're teaching people about subluxation and the nervous system, we want to see you at 65 plus. In that PVA realm, in order to really feel like you have a great solid foundation of recurring revenue and those raving fans in your practice that are going to help refer the right people in so that you can build on that. So I just wanted to give that lay of the land on the why. because a lot of chiropractors are, far below that. And so we want you to feel excited about the fact that the most potential you are always going to have in practice is going to be starting with the inside of your practice and working from the inside out. So just like the body, just make sure that you're remembering there's so many opportunities right in front of you. You just have to be willing to create some strategies and tactics to take advantage.
Yeah. Another way to look at this that we've talked about a lot is that if you have that patient visit average who's under 12, you're probably not giving any type of recommendations. It's probably like a, come on in, which isn't bad. We're not saying that's bad. We're going to dive into care plans and why it's important and all the X, Y's, and Z's of that in future episodes. But that's what we're seeing is that you're not really giving, maybe great recommendations or any recommendations at all or any type of care plan. If you're getting into that, 12 to 25-ish, they're viewing you as an alternate treatment for blank. You know what I mean? They have a headache, they're viewing you as a treatment for headache. If you have back pain, they're viewing you as a treatment for back pain. When you get over that, people are really understanding the power of wellness. They're understanding the power of a lifestyle and all that kind of stuff. And I think a lot of people we talk to, that's where they want to be. So we want to make sure that we are helping you and teaching you and doing everything that we possibly can for that.
Yeah. So again, Jake is going to get into a reactivation technique today, but I want to also just share before we dig into that. If you are listening to this and you're like, ooh, I have a ton of room for growth in this, then really the first step is just going back and looking at your stats, looking at your data, looking at your trends so that you can really nail down what needs to happen in a regular system in order for you to improve this in the long run. And this is where obviously, help like in the form of consulting and coaching can be super awesome. But really, without having that starting point of stats, you could implement a whole bunch of different strategies, but you're not going to be able to track your delta, right? You're not going to be able to track how those strategies are working for you. So just make sure, if there are a few stats that you are looking at on a regular basis, this should be one of them. It's always most accurate over a longer period of time. So just make sure you pull that as you are considering the strategy that Jake is going to share.
Yeah. So diving in, like I said, diving into where this is kind of the pull up a chair and what we've been kind of working on talking about. Some of this came from a great conversation that I had recently with an awesome chiropractor, Dr. Jason Deitch, if you're listening. He's a stud. And if you want some more done for you, really reactivation stuff, they got some great resources for you. One of the things that Krysti and I talk about a lot is the beauty and power of collaboration, and we want to build up other people in our profession who are doing amazing things and showcase them. So that's one of them. So if you want to check out what they're doing, it's pretty awesome stuff. But we want to just boil it down and give you something that you can do to hopefully like spark people back into your office, like generate some income, generate some buzz, generate some of the reactivation stuff. Because what our conversation entailed is that a lot of people that are sitting maybe, that in that inactive status or they haven't been in a while, they may be sitting there saying that they would come back to your office, but what they don't know is what is the process? Like, do I have to start over? What is that? What happens? They just don't even know how it happens to come back into your office. Like, can I even go back? Like, what happens if I go back? They don't know how that works, right? That's number one. Number two, they may be embarrassed. Maybe they fell off a care plan or they didn't follow your recommendations. So they're sitting there. They liked your office. They liked your process. They didn't think you were too expensive. They thought you were great, but they're either embarrassed or they don't know the next steps on what that takes to come back in your office. So all we're going to go through today is to close that gap. Make sure we tell them, hey, we still love you. We would love to see you back in here. And here's the process and the steps to get back into our office. And before we dive into that kind of next step, anything to add to that part, Krysti?
Yeah, that's such an important thing to note. And so as Jake is sharing the flip side of that, just again, think through the systematizing of it on the front end. So how are you going to systemize it moving forward so that they do know, right? So one of the things that we do in practice is, I'm sure most of you have a recall list that your CAs hopefully are, masters of. And so our CAs that are masters of the recall list are always telling patients when they're nearing the point where they would actually be becoming a reactivation. So in our office, it's 90 days. And so they are very well aware. They're, told directly like, hey, you're getting close to that 90 days. Let's make sure that we get you in so you don't cross that path. And then now we have to do a new exam. So that is just part of our system so that we know that everyone is aware of what it looks like. And so that's something that you could implement moving forward once you do what Jake is going to share to get, a volume of people back into the practice.
Yes, that is great. And what I love, that's a perfect lead in. And this is why it's pull up a chair. We didn't plan this, right? We're just talking and teaching, and hopefully you're gaining some steps and writing some notes. But I think before I'll dive into this part, you have to, the one thing I would suggest, and I think Krysti would also suggest, is that you have to make sure you have a rock solid reactivation system in your office. That means there's some parameters. What constitutes a reactivation? How long is someone inactive before, boom, this is what happens? It may be 90 days, like Krysti. Maybe it's 6 months. Maybe it's a year. We're not here to tell you what it has to be, but you have to have that idea of when is someone considered they can just get back on track with like an adjustment, and at what point do they have they need to go through a process again, new scans, new whatever. It may not be a full new patient visit. Actually, in a reactivation setting, I would recommend that it's not. You're lowering the bar a little bit, but they do have to go through a process to what that takes. How is your office, your staff handling that phone call? Or those text messages or emails, wherever they're coming in for you? What is the wording? What is the verbiage? How do they explain that new patient stuff, which we'll get into a little bit, or sorry, reactivation stuff. So that's kind of that part, is make sure you have a plan in place. So as you implement this campaign, that you're not, I didn't think about what we do, and then I turn this campaign on and oh crap, we didn't have a good system in place and it wasn't as effective as it could be. So first of all, make sure you plan that.
And everybody lean on your staff for this. I find 9 times out of 10, they know way more about what's actually happening in the patient's minds than I do. So as you are, considering what kind of system you're going to have in the long run, and, what kind of campaign you're going to do, as, Jake's going to share an example, just poll your staff and see what they think is, going on and what those commonalities are, so that you can truly design something that's going to work best for your environment.
Yeah, perfect. So when we want to go through a very tactical step about a reactivation campaign, the one thing I would do is first thing you want to do is create a list. Okay. You want to create a reactivation list. So one thing you want to do is set those parameters. What does that mean to you? Do you want to see everybody that has an appointment in a year, but not beyond 5 years, or a year to 3 years, or maybe it's 91 days to 3 years, or whatever those parameters are? If you set the parameters, I think almost any EHR system, you can do those parameters to create a list, right? You can sometimes go through and make a tag form, so you can, you can contact all these people at one shot. Sometimes you have to manually create the tag. Whatever you have to do, it's worth it, because I can promise you that, right? So the first thing I do is make this list. If you want to tag everybody, great. Another strategy would be to take this list, print it, and there may be some people you want to cross off, right? So once you make this list, you're like, oh, they left because they never paid their bill, or, whatever. There may be an exclusion list on that. You create this list and there's however many names on it. You can go through and manually take people off the list, or whatever you want to do. At the end of the day, you have this parameters, you create this list, right? What we suggest you do in that then is to create a very easy way to tell them, we still love you. Here's what happens when you get back in. You can call it a welcome back offer. You can call it a reactivation, whatever. You can call it a, spring back into your health. We don't really care what you call it, right? But just call it something that lets them know, right, that here's how to activate back into the process. Hey, just so you know, been whatever days, or hey, we'd love to see you back in the office. Our welcome back offer is $97, includes, a new set of new scans. Our doctors will go over them. We'll get you adjusted. We'll see at what point, if you're ready to jump back into wellness, if you need a kind of pick me up, whatever it is, right? But you're explaining to them that here's the process. We're going to update some scans. We'll get you adjusted. You'll talk over our doctors. We'll find the best course of action for you that way. But you're explaining that process, right? It can either be an image. You create an image that goes out via text with some wording. You can create an email that goes out. I would suggest both, right? But your idea is you send this thing out that lets them know, we'd love to see you back here. Here's the process. Here's the price. Whether you want to make it an offer, this is what you always charge, or whatever it is. And here's what we're going to go through. Anything else on that, Krysti?
I would just say, make sure you infuse your personality into whatever form you're going to use. So, one of the things that we're considering doing right now is shooting like a funny reel that is about like coming back and, sending a link for them to view that reel. So like we have a little bit of humor infused and a little bit of, we want them to know that we get that life happens. Like Jake said before, they might be embarrassed or just, have a weird funk about that returning. And the more that you can create an understanding, just a mutual level playing field that we know life happens and lots of stuff is going to get in the way, and we get it. We've been there too. I think the success that you're going to have with how, whatever method you choose is going to go up. So just making sure and, setting the stage as you're even going through the list. What I love to do, because of course we do those exclusions as well, but I love to just like send some love to the people that I'm highlighting on that list, right? Like it's just, there's so much power behind the intention with this type of thing as well. I mean, all of you have had that situation before where you think about someone and then the next day they call to become a reactivation, right? So those are just a couple little side tidbits that can be really helpful for the success of a campaign like this.
Yep. And then once you create that and it goes out, I would also suggest maybe a couple days later, 2 or 3 days later, it's just a like, hey, reminder, you know what I mean? Nothing like whatever, like, hey, remember this email or text we sent, kind of a thing. And then you kind of leave it. Like you're not wanting to do this like every day for 30 days, or you're just going to get people upset, right? But it's kind of like a little boost reminder to that same list, same group, like, hey, remember, boink, because some people may see it and like, oh, yes. And then they were in the middle of a meeting or life got busy and they just kind of forgot. It's just one little other shot to be like, oh, yeah, right. And then leave it. And you can do the same campaign again in 6 months or a year, whatever, right? But it's just a boom, this is what it is. Maybe a couple days later, just a little reminder kind of a thing, right? So that's the idea, right? Once they start coming back, you've already created that good system. You've already created the parameters. You've also created, here's how we scan, here's how we sit. I would also create, if you don't have it, right? There's going to be usually 3 categories of people that come back into your office, right? There's going to be everything's back. It's been a long time, 3 to 5 years. All their things are back, new things are back, whatever. Well, that care plan or that whatever is going to be very similar, if not to a new care plan, right? You're going to go through a whole new plan for them, right? There's going to be people that are really well. Maybe it's only been 90 days since they haven't been in there or 6 months or a year. And overall, they're doing really well. They just kind of, oh, I got out of a routine. I'm feeling pretty good and scans look good and whatever. Well, you can just reactivate them into your wellness campaigns, right? Hey, you dropped off, boom, we can get you back into our wellness campaigns. So those are the 2 ends. But there may be some in the middle. And we've seen that to where it's like, it's been a year. There's this headache stuff that they had. They look at the scans, they're not awful, but they're not at a wellness point, right? So you have some type of boost plan, right? Whatever that looks like in your practice, whether it's a 12 visit or a 6 visit or 18 visit. It's not the number, but it's the idea that it's some type of boost to get that back on track. And you talk about it that way. Hey, you know what? We just want to boost you over this next few weeks, month, whatever, to get you back. And then we'll be right back into that wellness plan that you were on. We just don't want to make sure you're there now and we're still experiencing some of this stuff. We just want to boost you back in. So it's almost like you have these 3 plans. Where are they in it? They have all kinds of crap that they came in with, and you do need to kind of start over. Did they just fall off wellness and they're doing great? They just need to get back on it, or is it somewhere in that boost plan in the middle? Make sure you have those options for people when they get back in and part of your system.
So we really hope you heard like it can be that easy. You literally just have to make it a point to do this. And like Jake said, one of the things we would invite you to do is put it in your calendar. If you want to do this every 6 months, put a reminder in your calendar, or obviously you could absolutely have team member, be a master of that as well. But if you have it scheduled, it doesn't have to take a lot of time. It doesn't have to take a lot of energy, but big picture, you are just putting it out there and remembering that working from the inside out is always going to be the easiest way for you to see the practice growth that you need. And also don't forget, this matters to patients. I cannot tell you how many times over the years we have heard that they were so thankful that we did reach out and we reminded them, because oftentimes people will say, this has been on my to-do list to get back on the wagon for however long, and you just made it easy because you guys reached out, and I would have kept having, life happening in the background. So it's really important because it helps to solidify that relationship with your patients, and it helps them remember that you're there for them regardless. And when the time is right, you're going to be there to support their health journey, whatever that looks like. So hope this was helpful.
Yeah, a couple, few other like little asterisk points or maybe additional comments on that. If you're doing this every 6 months, which is great, you're going to change those parameters, right? You can keep going to the people that are back every 5 years, whatever, or maybe just want to make it like every 6 months you're doing it, and it's the new parameters is those 6 months of people you haven't reached, right? Then maybe once a year you're doing the parameters again, right? That's one little extra tidbit. Number two is going forward, if you have a dynamic texting platform, patient contact system, you can actually set up something to trigger at 62 days, 91 days, 104 days. And maybe part of it is that you're setting up that system now, right? So you're going to do this massive campaign now and maybe a massive campaign in 6 months, but this system you set up will actually get every single one of these people that falls off from here on out. So you don't have to like do these big campaigns every 6 months. It's happening every day in your practice if you set up those systems right. And then the last thing I would add is I love what Krysti said about sending out some good juju, when you highlight these people. One of the things that we've always done as a staff is like, if someone comes on your mind, it's like, what happened to that? They're such a great person. Send them a text and tell them you thought about them through your platform. Hey, Cindy, was thinking about you today. Hope you and your family are doing great. We always have loved and appreciate you seen in the office. Send. Right? If you think about them, that comes up, just send them a message. It doesn't have to be part of a campaign. You don't have to wait 6 months. Just shoot them a message right when that happens. So as far as like additional tidbits, those were the three that came to my mind as we were talking, as something to implement with you.
Love it. So thanks for joining us. We would love to hear, you can catch us on social. We'd love to hear if you're going to implement some of these strategies.
Yes.
Let us know on social. Send us a DM. We'd love to start that conversation, and we will see you on the next episode.
Thanks for tuning in to the Pull Up a Chair show.
Whether you're watching on YouTube or listening to the show on your favorite platform, make sure you hit subscribe so you never miss an episode.
If you found value in today's episode, please share it with a colleague. We would be honored.
To connect with us, you can find us on IG at The Pursuit Kairos, or you can email us at connect@thepursuitkairos.com.